What's going on, everybody? I'm back with another video. This video is going to be looking at the Premier League match between Manchester City and Tottenham Hotspur. Now, before we get into the tactics behind the match and how Tottenham pulled out their 3-2 victory against Manchester City, check out both my books. They're online on Amazon, and there's links in the description below. Also, be sure to check out Keyframe. It's the program I'm using to make this video, and that also is in the description below. Now let's get right into the tactics behind the match, starting with Manchester City in possession. So Manchester City went with Kyle Walker as a right fullback, which changed the dynamics of their build-up. So oftentimes we would see Kyle Walker stay in the first line of build-up, creating a back three in possession of the ball, allowing their two central defenders to then progress through the half spaces via dribbling alongside Rodri and try and attract a midfielder of Tottenham Hotspur. From the other side of things, Tottenham Hotspur went with a 5-4-1 or a 5-2-3 in possession, with Harry Kane as the lone forward, and then with Son and Kulusevski as the inside attacking forwards to support Kane. Higher up the field, Manchester City would then use players to overload the space between the lines in a dynamic way. So we would have Gundogan and Phil Foden dropping deeper as two players almost always occupying space between the lines. They would then be accompanied by one or two players from the wide area, and this is where the movement was able to derive from these wide positions. Using dual width allowed players to then invert into the half spaces to create 2, 3, or 4 players occupying the space between the lines, and depending on the situation, this would often either create overloads to progress through, or it would create space in the wide area for single width to then progress around the block. Now as we attack Tottenham Hotspur and their low block, we would go with their back three with Kyle Walker and Laporte on either side of Ruben Diaz. Then Rodri as a single pivot being blocked off by Harry Kane. And then we can start to see the occupation of the space between the line. Cancelo inverts alongside Gundogan. Phil Foden and De Bruyne also accompany these two players between the lines. And then we start to see some dynamics. First of which is Cancelo inverting, allowing a direct pass to go around the opposing team's block and narrow the Tottenham Hotspur defensive shape just enough to allow this pass to open up to Phil Foden in the wide area and allow him to progress into a dangerous crossing position. Then on the weak side, we also see similar situation with Kevin De Bruyne just fanning out into the wide area, taking advantage of the narrow shape from Tottenham. And by having Kevin De Bruyne fan out into the wider position, he then gives himself a very good angle to cross the ball in behind the back line, who has a relatively high defensive line with space in behind for then deep runners to make runs into and potentially get him behind. Now we see the back five for Tottenham, and by having three central defenders, it often puts them in a good position to jump and use man orientation against the players of Manchester City occupying the space between the lines. So as we see here, Bernardo Silva and Gundogan as the two most inside attacking midfielders create a 2 versus 3 against the Tottenham central defenders, allowing Tottenham to have one free center back, and then the midfield from Tottenham adjust to then maintain this numerical advantage in their last line of defense. So with our four-man midfield, we have Kulusevski now dropping deeper, marking the run of Cancelo, who's now playing as a single width for Manchester City in the wide area, and at the base of it is still the diamond midfield shape with Rodri and the three central defenders in their rest defense and first two lines of build-up. So this gives Tottenham a high amount of spatial control in the low block and forces Manchester City to play into wider areas with a numerical disadvantage against the last line, which is something that Manchester City do quite often, is create a numerical advantage against the last line of defense against their opponents in a low block. They're often very good at this, which is a very hard thing to do, so Tottenham did very well in limiting the access to these numerical advantages by having a very robust midfield. And as the game went on, as we see later on in the match, Manchester City had to take more risks in possession, which then saw their rest defense go from 4 players to now just 3, with Rodri and the two central defenders making up a 2-1 build-up shape with even more players overloading the space between the lines. So we have Bernardo, Gundogan, Phil Foden, and Riyad Mahrez in this situation, all playing more narrow inside the width of the penalty area, occupying the central corridors. Then we have Kyle Walker overlapping with João Cancelo. So with this high amount of players between the lines, it creates a lot of vacant space for the fullbacks to overlap and potentially progress around the block and get access to dangerous areas inside the block, allowing players from deep to make runs in these areas. So this was a very risky strategy because of the control they lost over transitions against Tottenham. Tottenham responded by narrowing their back five, creating the numerical advantage they still have over the attacking line in the midfield corridors, in the central corridors against Manchester City, and then now the midfield became a little bit more overextended so they could have access to the fullbacks in the wide area and prevent Manchester City from creating a numbers advantage going forward. Now Tottenham in build-up in their possession phase, they have 3 central defenders, which created asymmetry in their first line. So we have 2 players on the left, 1 on the right, with our wingbacks creating full width in deeper areas, allowing the inside forwards of Kulusevski and Son to remain narrow in the half space. Then we have a double pivot to create security in possession and circulation, but more so to win second balls and control transitions from Manchester City. Manchester City went with their 4-2-3-1 and a very intense press, as they've been doing, to try and win the ball back as soon as possible. So the central forward cuts the field in half, and then we start to see the man-oriented press with Sterling attacking a central defender. Now our fullback Kyle Walker waiting in a little bit deeper area to then invite the pass before he goes and presses in the wide area to set a pressing trap, with Kevin De Bruyne as the number 10 blocking access to the holding midfielders to isolate circulation. Now moving up the field, we see Manchester City use their 4-2-3-1 with Kevin De Bruyne as the 10 just behind Bernardo Silva in this situation. So now Tottenham build from a first line of 3 central defenders. Their double pivot higher up the field create more movement and staggering among these 2 players, and then we see a narrow front 3 of Harry Kane, Kulusevski, and Son occupying dangerous space, narrowing the back 4 of Manchester City and allowing more freedom for the wingbacks to get on the ball with time and space to create overlapping and progress around the Manchester City mid-block. So the space was in the wide area for Tottenham to then progress against the City side, and then even though Manchester City had the ball in more dangerous areas for most of the game, it was Tottenham who were able to create dangerous chances with efficiency to finish them off to then win the match, which was very impressive from this Tottenham side and showed great resilience, and then now makes the title race even tighter and the race for top 4 a little bit more exciting as well. So hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.